Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I hope you all are having a good start to the new year. First of all, a very warm welcome to you all for our webinar today on State of IoT and Data Movement in 2023. I am Jayashree Hegde, helping with moderating this webinar. With the new year kicking in, I'm sure you all are curious to know the latest trends in IoT and how you can take advantage of these upcoming trends. That's why we are starting 2023 with the webinar topic discussing state of IoT and data of movement in 2023 to help you be ahead of the curve. Allow me to introduce you all to our speakers for today, Dominik Obermaier, CTO and co-founder of HiveMQ, and Gaurav Suman, Director of Product Marketing at HiveMQ. A very warm welcome to you, Dominik and Gaurav. Before we kick off this session, I would like to share that we are recording this webinar and we will share the presentation slides as well as the recording of the webinar in a follow-up email. During the presentation, if you have any questions, feel free to add them to the Q&A box in the control panel. The speakers will address them one by one during the Q&A session. Last but not least, we will launch a poll during the Q&A. I request you all to participate. And do stay tuned with us till the end of the session as there are some exciting things to share with you all. Now, without further ado, I will hand it over to Gaurav. Welcome, everyone.
Excellent. Thank you, Jayashree. And can you confirm you can see my slide with the speakers on there?
Yes.
Fantastic. So hi, everybody. Thank you for joining. Very happy that you all decided to take the time to join us today. My name is Gaurav Suman. I'm joining you from Ottawa, Canada. I lead a function called product marketing here at HiveMQ. And with me is our CTO, Dominik Obermaier. I'll give the mic to Dominik for a minute, and then I'll take it back to continue with the presentation. Dominik, over to you.
So hi, everybody. Really excited to meet all of you virtually. So thank you so much for tuning in. So we will have some very interesting trends to discuss today. But let me briefly introduce myself. I'm Dominik. I'm the CTO and one of the co-founders of HiveMQ. I've spent a big chunk of my career working in different technical committees, especially around standardizations, especially for internet communication protocols like MQTT version 3.5. These days, I'm also doing a lot of work with something called MQTT-SN, and there will be also some, I hope, interesting conversations around it today. Also, I'm a member of the Spark Club working group, and especially the folks who are in the industrial IoT space. So we have also in this presentation also a lot of content around that. So again, I spend a lot of time on that. I spend also a lot of time on conferences, writing articles, and in general, talking to customers and to people in the IoT and in the IIoT space. And having that said, I would like to hand over to Gaurav again.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Dominik. Excellent. So, Jayashree, can I just keep moving, or do you have anything to say before we start?
No, you can kick off the session, Gaurav.
Sounds good. And if anybody has any questions, thoughts, keep using the chat. I can see already a lot of action there. I can see people joining in from all over the world. So that's fantastic. And that's perhaps a good reason to give you this sort of bigger lay of the land, as they say, right? I mean, there is no question about the rate of growth of IoT deployments. And what you see on your screen is a projection that by the end of 2025, we will hit about 27 billion connected devices. That's a huge number, right? And in the way to that number, we have had a chip shortage, we've had supply chain disruption, but still we are on track to hit 27 billion deployed devices. Now, these are not laptop computers, these are not tablets, these are not mobile phones, these are PLCs, IoT endpoints, gateways, smart sensors. That's the kind of deployment we are talking about here. The number is huge by any measure. But what's also interesting is that while this is happening, and while the growth and the deployment of IoT devices is so staggering and so huge, there are some really large corporations which are pulling away from their IoT practice. And all of this has happened in 2022, where, between, say, SAP, IBM, Ericsson, and Google, and that's a combined market cap of $1.72 trillion. But despite that, these companies have decided to pull away from their IoT practice, sell it, shut it down. Something has happened there, right? And industry observers and analysts are calling for more consolidation in 2023. So that's something to watch out for as you think about your initiatives and what's coming up next, right? Now, that being said, this is all vendor dynamics, business priorities of some companies. Despite all of that, the problems to solve are real. The problems that IoT is solving and promises to solve, they are very real. Some of the ones which from a 2023 perspective, we believe are really pressing, and data shows us, how significant amount of progress is being made thanks to IoT in all of these areas, beginning with, for example, climate change, right? There is the need and the opportunity to monitor and track energy consumption, performance of renewable infrastructure across remote areas. One of our customers, for example, and I would love for you to just check out our use case and case study around Fortum Spring, for example, which is a renewable energy use case from Finland. Natural disaster management, and there's some interesting innovation going on in this area, where, as an example, IAV GmbH, they use rain sensors on moving cars to be able to predict the likelihood of a flash flood or heavy rainfall. And those are the kind of things which IoT is enabling. Urbanization, which is where IoT plays a very clear role with smart city initiatives, public transit initiatives, and things along those lines. Healthcare, again, a huge area, very, very early days for IoT there. Some would say, for example, here, Proximi, a client who we are helping now, is doing remote robotic surgeries on the back of IoT. So this is, again, a use case I would invite you to review and understand more on our website. But this, and then the idea of agriculture and retail, which comes with its own set of supply chain and logistics challenges. These are really pressing, significant issues in front of us, and IoT has a way to solve this. While we are on the topic, let me definitely talk about the security, and this is security of the cyber kind and the physical kind, really. And IoT is interesting, unique when it comes to security, because the devices you are operating, they need to be protected while they are out in the wild, right? These are devices deployed far out in the field. Somebody could actually take them home, try to break into them, reverse engineer. So you have to protect the device itself, and you have to protect the infrastructure which the device was connecting to. But all of those things are problems emanating from IoT in some ways, but also being solved on the back of a technology that IoT can enable. The other one I'll quickly touch upon is aging population, which is a reality in many parts of the world. We are helping one client to, for example, help extend the number of years that people can get support at their homes. So Arkia, as a case study, is on our website. I would invite you to check that out. But again, at-home care, fault detection, etc., those are kind of things which IoT is enabling. But when you think about the challenges which are in front of us, and these are obviously the ones which impact humanity on a large scale, these are not going away. And what you're really doing in all of these use cases is to collect and analyze large amounts of data from connected endpoints, but that's not where it stops, right? And what I mean by that's not where it stops is that the beauty of an enterprise which is driven by data, which is collecting all this amazing amount of data in real time, is that the means to then implement the decisions you make, right? You're analyzing the data, and now you have to have the means to implement the decision, but not stop there, right? You are then able to put it back into use and keep working through this loop in a way, right? And in the process, you are improving the business efficiency, reducing your cost, increasing safety and security. And those are the kind of things which help you derive value from the IoT data that you're capturing from a plant floor, from devices out in the field. So the opportunity is to find new revenue streams and efficiency in your business. But the question is, how do you get there, right? How does the data, again, get from, say, oil rigs and remote infrastructure, and then become an asset that can deliver value for your customers and for your business? So the trends that we will cover today, you see a bit of a preview of that on the left of your screen here, will show you that path in a way. So our goal is to make sure that you can see what's going on and how that can become the tailwind that can help you get moving on your IoT initiatives and projects. So with that said, Dominik, I'll pass it on to you, and I'm going to run the presentation. Keep please telling me when you want me to move the slides. I'll do that for you. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you, Gaurav. So I'd like now to take some time to talk about some of the key trends we're observing in the market. And Gaurav already mentioned some of the interesting use cases, what is possible with IoT. And what is also super important for me when I talk to our customers, it's usually IoT starts, or very often IoT starts in order to find out a lot of efficiency gains. But what it's really about is, especially with these kind of IoT technologies, these data streaming technologies, our customers, but also companies in general, can do things they couldn't be doing before. And many of these trends we talk about today also lean a bit into that. But there is a few preconditions, especially when it comes to IoT. And what is something that is honestly was a bit concerning in the last year. We saw a lot of consolidation. We see a lot of organizations basically without a lot of IoT knowledge, relying on vendors, even big vendors. We saw, for example, Google, SAP, IBM, and others, who are basically now shutting down their IoT operations. And this is extremely concerning because for many customers, they made strategic decisions, and now basically there is like a lot of pressure in order to get some of the basically the decisions fixed that have been made. And we will talk about some of the things that also help organizations really go into IoT with basically the right basically tools and knowledge at hand, what is also required in order really to unlock most of the value. And we will talk about this later on a bit more. So the first trend we want to talk about, and we have all of this in slides, it's basically the adoption of integration-friendly IIoT standards and protocols. And just because I see it in the chat, so what we saw last year is that Google shut down, GCP shut down its IoT. Basically in this year, in August, they will discontinue it. And other vendors like SAP also announced it. Microsoft Azure has not announced any kind of discontinuation of their offerings. It is interesting though, because now what is really something we see a lot in the market. And what you see here on the slide is part of a survey we did with IIoT World. And this is IoT World is basically a company really focusing on the industrial IoT side of things. So many people here in this audience who are dealing with industrial IoT will very likely know IoT World. And we did a survey with them. And in the survey, we asked, which of the following data movement tools do you consider essentially to fulfill your industrial IoT strategy? And it was extremely interesting to see that more than 50% of all companies, and as a reminder here, we had, I think, more than 130 people, most of them being executives in their businesses, or many of them, and also lead architects answering here in this survey. They consider MQTT as one of the key strategic technologies in here. What was honestly even to us surprising to see the extent of what MQTT Sparkplug as a technology, how strategic it was for many of these companies, that every fourth company had MQTT Sparkplug on their agenda. So what this really means is if you're in the IIoT space, if you're doing industrial and you don't have MQTT Sparkplug currently on your radar, 2022 might be the perfect time to be really ahead of the curve and really unlock some of the benefits other companies are already unlocking. And what is interesting that even OPC UA, especially in Europe, is very, very dominant, but of course also in North America, only a bit more than 30% considered it really essential here. So the thing is, so a quick refresher for people who are very new to MQTT and so on. So MQTT is basically a technology that is lightweight, efficient, and supports bi-directional messaging from cloud to devices. And so it started in 1999, basically for monitoring oil pipelines. with Philips 66 back then. But in 2010, around that, it really received a renaissance, if you will, because it was discovered that all the problems with machine-to-machine communications are properly addressed by the communication protocol. And so while it's very technical, still this is considered for many companies very strategic to have a proper data movement strategy based on MQTT. And we will see today that connected cars. So for example, here at HiveMQ, and I personally also have a bit of a background in automotive. And so because every German car manufacturer works with us, as well as most of North American and many in Asia. And HiveMQ is basically connecting most of the connected cars or many of the connected cars worldwide with these technologies. So MQTT is a technology where like you literally, you connect tens of millions of cars, for example, in the field and bring it basically to the backend, to the cloud. But also it's used heavily in industrial IoT, where you usually don't have millions of devices in a factory. I have not seen it. Usually you're having a lot of assets, but usually more in the hundreds or sometimes thousands. And MQTT is really also designed for connecting that. And this is and you get this kind of almost real-time communication, this snappy communication all across the globe. There you have this what we call push-push communication. Also over unreliable networks. And what is so interesting, why are we even talking about MQTT? Because MQTT is a foundational technology where other, let's say, technologies like Sparkplug sits basically, Sparkplug sits on top of MQTT, similar to many, let's say, other protocols sit on top of HTTP, like, for example, REST sits on top of HTTP. Sparkplug sits on top of MQTT. And Sparkplug enables what people call a unified namespace. So for the folks in the industrial IoT space here, what you usually have is, if you look into a factory, you have this kind of spaghetti architecture where you have point-to-point connections from assets, devices, applications, like SCADA systems, manufacturing execution systems, and so on. And you have this point-to-point integrations. This makes it very hard to maintain, and it makes it very hard to scale, and it makes it, this is the key problem, very hard to unlock value for the business because you have data sitting everywhere and you don't have the access. And very often this access is required on the IT side of things and not on the operations technology side of things. So what we see as a key trend is that many customers and users are now gravitating towards the so-called unified namespace solution. What this basically means is you have a kind of a data space where you have like really everything you ever wanted to know about a factory, about the manufacturing processes, and so on. And this unified namespace gives you access to that. And we have, and this is so interesting. I was visiting a customer in Detroit a while ago, and they told me that unified namespace for them also means they push in things, even like shift plans, for example. They're planning to do that. So basically having a access, like a namespace, a live data streaming namespace where you get all of the data you want for the business and unlock value here. And we will talk about some other trends that really enable almost this kind of central nervous system for your business, really from edge to cloud and everything in between. So for the folks who haven't heard about UNS, who will find it interesting, we have a guide also, what we call a unified namespace essentials guide, which is available for free on our website. So the team is very happy to share the link also with that, so people can get access and learn more about it, what it means, and what kind of value can be unlocked here. But the key message here is really, if especially folks in the industrial IoT space, if Sparkplug and unified namespace is not on your agenda, this is something I personally would really make sure this is on the radar to make a proper decision and be ahead of the curve. Because it's really crazy what companies are doing out there and what kind of efficiency gain they unlock, and also what kind of real-time insights into the business they unlock by this almost radical new approach of basically building your data structures or data infrastructures. So one of the things I already mentioned, so we have also some case studies online. One of them is, for example, with automotive manufacturing. And yes, and one of them is basically with Daimler. We're working with them since now many years, and they have a similar approach for the vehicle diagnostic systems. Again, this is also on the website available if people want to check out the whole use case and what this company is doing, connecting the factories. Feel free to dig into all of the details. Now I want to go to the next trend. And this is something that is, of course, nothing new for most people in IT. But especially now with the changing markets, and we see markets change everywhere, like especially last year it started, but this year many companies are looking at gaining more efficiencies and also really make sure that they are reducing their logins, because some of their strategic decisions didn't really pay off. And Gaurav mentioned it in the beginning that we have some major vendors pulling back from IoT and have their customers basically standing in the rain. And one of the key things is we have for years now as a multi-cloud strategy. And many companies these days have that. So most Fortune 500 companies we work with are very heavy into multi-cloud because the vendor login is real and businesses really feel the pain of that. And we really see a maturity here also in the market, also more appetite for multi-cloud strategies. And here we have a quick chart from the Flexera 2022 State of the Cloud report. And we also see here that, that there is a lot of reasons why multi-cloud architectures are really state of the art. So, for example, what we also see a lot is starting from cloud brokering to intelligent workload placements, and you see all the other things in the slide here. This is really a key thing. And also when it comes to, and it also unlocks other things like cost savings and so on. So just as a quick side note here also, so we've been talking also a lot about basically open standards, and one of the things we see in the market is that the appetite for open standard grows bigger and bigger. And this is nothing new. I mean, we see it basically with the internet technologies are completely based on open standards. Still, many industries are currently not really really thinking about their openness. While many companies are working with open source, sometimes the strategic decision-making on betting on open standards is not really done. And one of the things that I personally spent almost my whole career on is working on open standards like MQTT. And one of the key things is why is MQTT so interesting for so many industries? It's because it's a completely open standard, it's completely interoperable, and this allows a business basically to have a device communicating over an open standard, and then they're free to use in the cloud backend any kind of vendor. There is a catch though, that if you look at most public cloud platforms today, unfortunately, MQTT as a standard is not really supported to its full extent. So I really would urge everybody to read the small print of what the capabilities really are, because cloud vendor logins are real, and we unfortunately, or some people are reaching out to us because their cloud vendor of choice is not supporting MQTT anymore, and they have a hard time switching also into other basically vendors because MQTT was not really supported in an open and standardized way, and this makes it very hard, and this really doesn't pay off from an investment perspective. And so this is one of the things that is very important and dear to my heart for me, because open standards are really the way to connect things to the internet, be it an application or be it a device. And so I urge everybody also to, if they are connecting to some endpoints of third-party vendors, always make sure that they support the open standard. The same is also true for Sparkplug, and we see a lot of interest in that. So we've also been having you also help basically with the Sparkplug standard, getting it out of the door at beginning of this year. And there's tremendous interest in the industry. Why? Because it's one of the first truly open plug-and-play interoperability solutions. And now going to the next slide.
So Dominik, one small thing, and perhaps my bad, I think I skipped one slide. You were talking about multi-cloud, but this, the technology, the open source, rather open standard slide came in between. So if you don't mind just finishing your thought on the multi-cloud you were talking about before. And then
okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Going now back a bit to the multi-cloud. Thank you, Gaurav. So this is what we see with many of our customers when they have mature use cases. So they use a cloud-native MQTT broker or a platform. In our case, of course, it's the HiveMQ platform that allows to connect even more than 100 million devices to the same installation to the cloud, usually running either on cloud-native technologies like Kubernetes, sometimes in on-premises data centers, but also these days very often either on AWS, Microsoft Azure, sometimes also Google or other platforms. And they use it to connect their devices in a completely open and standardized way. So they use the open MQTT protocol. And then in order to, but the thing is, you need to make use of some of the data. So you need to move the data where it should be. And this is why at the same installation can bridge basically to different services on AWS, on Google, on Microsoft Azure, and so on, and then bring it, for example, into data lakes, into machine learning applications, to microservices, or whatever is required by the use case. And what is the great thing about this is, so we have the strong belief that as soon as the use case evolves, one should not change the devices. This means a firmware update is also these days sometimes very hard to do, especially if you want to patch your whole fleet of devices. And so key is really that all the changes, for example, a new use case arises, a new machine learning application should be used, that you change the data streams basically in the cloud, move it where it needs to be without changing basically your interface to your devices, what we see here on the left. And this is really key. And this is something we see many of our customers who have adopted a multi-cloud strategy use. So they can use the HiveMQ platform on one or multiple of the clouds of choice and then bridge the data or move the data where it needs to be. And this in a bidirectional way, not only from device to service, but also from the services back to the device. And one of the things, now we talk a bit about cloud. I think one of the key trends also in the last year we saw, and we just see the space heating up and heating up. It's basically the edge space. And edge is something most companies already have in their agenda. And what is really interesting that Gartner says that around 10% of enterprise generated data is created and processed outside the traditional centralized data center or cloud today. But in 2025, and I mean, we're talking about 2 years from now, they even go so far and say most of the data, so 75% of the data that is required to unlock value for an enterprise is generated not in a centralized data center or in a cloud, but somewhere else. So moving the data where you can unlock the value is one of the key problems companies have these days. And the thing is, what we also see is the kind of they're almost what people call the real-time insights into the business. Basically, when something happens somewhere on the globe, in the snap, you have that in your application where you need that to be, and this requires a lot of thought, basically, when it comes to edge. And on the next slide, what we see is that edge continues to be one of the key trends in 2023 for most industries. And one of the things that I was completely, honestly blown away when I saw this was what some companies are doing today. is with multi-tiered architectures. And what we mean with multi-tiered architectures are architectures there you build a central nervous system between basically your edge and cloud. And I give you one example. So so we have a customer that is connecting multiple factories around the globe. And what they're able to achieve is, although there's a complete different technology stack in all of the factories because they're producing different things in these factories, they still are, in a centralized way, very interested in things like mean time to recovery, mean time between failures, and so on. And they basically want to make sure if something happens, they can recover very fast, but also making sure that bad things don't happen. Because in manufacturing, this is extremely costly if we have a standstill. This is like immensely costly. And if these companies get basically the downtime down by minutes or even hours, I mean, this is like a lot of money the business saves here, or actually more money the business makes. And what we helped enable them is this kind of multi-tiered architectures, building a central nervous system with MQT technologies, basically from the machine on the manufacturing line up to the cloud, and enabling them to have even a scoreboard and understanding what's going on all around the globe. So people really increased their efficiencies massively, and they did this with a proper edge and cloud strategy playing together, completely based on open standards. So one of the things also when it comes to edge is we see a lot of data being produced on the edge. The problem here is that also the kind of bandwidth required is a lot. While usually, for example, in factories again, while usually you have a very good connectivity between the devices and so on, still bandwidth is getting really the limiting factor at some point of time, especially when you also bring in cloud. And so what you really need is a very efficient way of basically moving the data. Ease of deployment is, from my perspective, table stakes these days. So the times are over. So I vividly remember the times when it took me multiple days, when I was a software engineer back then, multiple days installing Oracle databases and so on. These days, from my perspective, are over. Deployments need to be simple, fast, in a cloud-native way. People expect, even on the edge, a user experience like you have in the cloud. And also technology trends like Kubernetes moving more towards the cloud really fire that trend even more. Because IT, while the quote is really old, I still think it's true. Software is still eating the world, and IT is eating more OT. And the deployment and ease is extremely important. And the other thing as I talk about is login risk. So please, this is one of the key things. We're in conversation with so many companies currently that really lost a lot of money by making bets and basically got locked in with not a clear way forward of moving out of the vendor lock-in. Use open standards. If you use HiveMQ technologies or other technologies, use open standards so you are not locking out your devices, that you can still have the freedom of choice what kind of vendor you're using in the cloud. There are a lot of opportunities here. And one of the things I really would like for, especially the technologists here in this audience, I really would urge to pay attention. MQTT for sensor networks is not ready for prime time. This will be released very soon. It will be a complete game changer for any kind of edge deployments where predictable latencies are required. It will be a complete game changer for low power wide area networks. And this is something I really think people do not pay enough attention, but this will be a game changer here. And we also will provide more content on it very soon. And I will talk about later about this a bit more. Open standards. I think this is I'm repeating myself here, but really open standards are one of the key things. And also deployment and ease of scale. There is really a lot of opportunities. Getting started with technologies on the edge should be like a matter of minutes or hours maximum and not more. This is at least our perspective. And there's no reason why this should be hard these days anymore. We're in 2023. So, and with having that said, I give you one of the things, another kind of edge deployment I quickly want to talk about. And I was visiting a company called Rimas in Croatia. They're making hypercars. Unfortunately, a bit out of budget for me, but this is like extremely amazing hypercars, electric hypercars. These guys are really changing what an electric supercar is these days. And what you can achieve with proper technologies on the edge, because if you think about it, a car is also edge. There are thousands of sensors. They collect every second multiple times the data, and then they bring it to an application where you can have proper troubleshooting, find efficiencies, inefficiencies, and so on. And you can even go so far that the car is able to drive better than and give coaching and recommendations to people driving the car because of all of the data. Unlocking the rich data streams in physical devices, be it in factories or in cars, it's just amazing what you can do today. Honestly, when I look at what some of our customers are doing here by unlocking all of this richness of data to their applications and to their business, this is really honestly a glimpse into the future. And I'm completely blown away what some of these companies are doing. One of them is also Rimas. We also have a case study with them. So who is interested in that, this can also be found on our webpage. So some of the things also where HiveMQ also can help you when it comes to observability. It's of course the observability on the device is the one thing, but also observability means usually you have a clear understanding of what's happening with all of your devices on the one side, but also with your backend infrastructure, all your services and so on. And if you think about it, there are usually thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of devices being connected in many mature IoT use cases. And if you have 100 devices and 1% of your customers are having an issue, you have one customer having an issue. The dynamics change completely if you have 1 million or 10 million, or one of our customers is more than 100 million devices in a single installation. If 1% of your customers is having an issue because of connectivity, of latencies, because the application backend is not responding in time, there's a database issue somewhere, then you have a real user experience problem. And depending on the kind of business, there might be an issue that escalating to call centers and then to management. And we've seen this multiple times because scale is hard. And this is what we are also focusing on. It's not only moving the data, but finding the needle in the haystack, giving the tools to our customers to understand when something goes wrong, understanding what's going wrong and how to fix it. And what we believe in, it's not waiting for something to basically go wrong, but having the kind of indication beforehand. Because if you see like backend services are slowly increasing the latencies, but still the customer experience is good, you can still react. And reacting, from my perspective at least, is always better when there's not a pressing issue at hand and you can still act and not only react. And this is why we're also focusing on that. On the one side, of course, I mean, how HiveMQ makes money, basically it's reliability, and it's also the flexibility and also the scale of the kind of use cases we have. And then also basically the kind of, if we can just go back one slide above. So this is what HiveMQ is really about. This is what our customers really care. It just needs to work all the time, independent of which scale, from one devices to tens of millions of devices. Yes. And if you go to the next slide now. And this is also what one of our last trends we want to talk today is. It's basically fully managed solutions. While fully managed solutions are nothing new in the industry, of course, especially with a lot of the cost savings many enterprises are looking at, And also especially basically with, I mean, let's face it, most companies are really struggling to find proper personnel in time to really be fast to market, and also have all the qualifications in the company. And this is also very expensive. So many companies are deciding, of course, to basically go to fully managed solutions for solving some of, especially when it comes to technology. This just makes sense. It saves time and resources. Usually, if you outsource it, you have specialists running it, because very, very often you don't have only specialists who only do a specific job, especially operations people, and so on. And also, honestly, if you let companies who are really experts in a specific system, like a database, like in a data streaming service, like in an MQT service, let them run it, the risk of errors and downtime is not as high as if you would run it yourself, if you're not a world-class expert in what you're doing. And also another thing is requirements change. In IT, requirements change all the time, and also some flexibilities are also required when it comes to the kind of investments companies want to make. And this is also how fully managed solutions are still continuing to trending. And it's from what we really observe is this is absolutely accelerating. And this brings me to the next slide. So how we are helping here, and for example, we have on our cloud, we have, for example, one of the largest truck manufacturer in the world who's relying on connecting all of their trucks worldwide with HiveMQ, but still having the full flexibility of bringing in their own microservices and so on. And this is why basically we have this kind of what we call HiveMQ messaging and connectivity platform in the cloud. We're offering this for smaller customers. Also, we have a free tier, so it's completely free to try it out also. But of course, for the more professional use cases, we're working together with our customers to connect multiple millions of devices, to have a proper backbone for their factories, for example, and so on. And this is really run by experts. I mean, HiveMQ is doing this for more than 10 years now. And we have all the SLAs that business can rely on. Because like, as I said, IoT is never sleeping. I mean, you expect 24/7, 7 days a week. It just needs to work. And because otherwise, customer experiences for the end customer really suffers. And we're specializing on that. And also the cost savings are pretty huge. We could help some of our customers unlock. Okay, and now some of the things, because we also got some questions beforehand about like basically what are we thinking about, what are we cooking, and I give you just a few of the things. I mean, one of the things is MQTSN. So expect us to be similar to what we did with MQTT version 3 and 5. We were the first to market with these technologies. Expect us to also help here with MQTT SN for the people who want to try it out, for the technologists who want to get their hands dirty and really understand what this technology can help their business unlock and what new use cases they can actually do. Sparkplug is a key topic for us. So as we help with the specification, we have many customers running Sparkplug. We will release also to the public, to the more broader audience, Sparkplug awareness to make it much more easy for Sparkplug users to use HiveMQ. I mean, it's already easy, but basically making it plug and play. This is really what it's about. Portability, key thing for us on the edge, in the cloud, still relying on open standards. We will, although sometimes I hear from people it would be always easier to log in customers, I personally deeply believe in open standards, and I don't believe in customer login when it comes to open standards at all. I believe customers should have the freedom of choice to move their devices and device data where they want them to be, where they need them to be. And this is what of course we're heavily focusing also in this year. And also simplicity. We will have a lot of basically new things coming out. I cannot tell everything, unfortunately, but people running factories, people are basically integrating MQT in their factories. People are integrating it into their apps and so on, and logistics companies. We have a lot cooking for that. So if people are interested, feel free to reach out. I cannot tell too much right now, but this year is exciting. And I cannot wait to share with people directly one-to-one what we're cooking here. So now to then briefly sum it up. So we also have then some time for questions.
Yes. This is the last slide we have, Dominik, and then we can take questions.
Yes. So as a quick recap, so and Gaurav said in the beginning, some of the trends we're seeing, the one is really observability and analytics for efficiency in business models, fully meshed and governed solutions. I haven't talked a lot about data governance, which is not a key trend, but what we always see also in addition to some of these trends. Multi-cloud strategies are maturing, and companies are really unlocking the value out of these multi-cloud strategies they have. And also when it comes to integration of IIoT standards and protocols, this is really a trend, plug and play, integratability, making it very easy to work together. This is just something the customers want. Building silos is something that I don't believe 2023 anybody should be doing that. It's all about helping customers unlock the value of their data. And because with all the data, and especially with IoT, it's easy to, this is when it comes to opportunities. There's a way to find new revenue streams and efficiencies in the business. And this is what we see over and over again. Usually we see also people come for IoT technologies for a specific use case, and they stay for all of the value they unlock by basically bringing the data together. Also, really as a company, you should focus on your resources and your strengths. The economic situation is a bit rougher than in the last 5+ years for most industries. So this really forces companies to understand how they can contribute and then also find potential to save money. And also it's basically easy. Another opportunity is easy and standardized workflows to gather data from the field. So this was a quick glimpse into 2023, what we believe is important, what we are seeing in the market within our customer base. And I see we have some questions. Oh yeah, one last thing. So 2023 is the best year to start your IT journey. If you haven't started, it's the best way to start. If you're already on your journey, it's a great way to continue and to mature. And one of the things as a quick sneak peek. So the IoT world is sometimes really hard to find really the right information, also on the internet. We will be sending to all of the participants for free our brand new MQT platform buyer's guide that helps you really understand what are the key things for really unlocking value for data-driven enterprises. So this will be something the team will be sending out to participants end of this week, latest beginning of next week. So let us know what we think, what you think. And now with that, I think we can open now the stage for some questions.
Awesome. So Dominik, I'll be conscious of time here and pick some questions which I think form a majority of things which are on people's mind. There's a bunch of people who are asking about, hey, what's going on with these big tech companies that they're pulling back from IoT, right? It's one of the questions is there no big market for IoT? Is that why they're pulling back? What's your perspective on this?
I mean, so I think depending on what analyst you ask, it's around $1 trillion market. So I think the market is big enough for a lot of companies. So I think there are multiple reasons for that. I mean, we will see consolidation, and I think I think it was a few years ago that I read an interesting analyst report that says there are more than 460 IoT platforms out there. I don't know what the numbers in 2023, but analysts predict consolidation now for quite some time. Honestly, my suspicion on that is that basically the time of free money is over. Companies are focusing on their core competencies. And yeah, I mean, there are strong players in the market. So I can just say from our side, what we see is basically our business is accelerating massively year over year. And it's just crazy what companies are doing out there. So from my perspective, the opportunities are there. I think especially larger corporations sometimes struggle with some of the dynamics changing in the market. What we see, honestly, what we see is that a lot of technologies drive more and more decisions. Sales is being done more bottoms up than top down. Product-led growth is something we see a lot more in the market. And we have people, users, adopters have a proper expectation how software should be and so on. And I think it's also could have to do with that. And the other thing is really just positioning and pricing. Yeah, but still, I do expect that also some other companies are also pulling back a bit their investments. I mean, people have probably seen. I mean, especially large corporations are laying off people. We see, and unfortunately, my LinkedIn network is full of people also from large corporations, Google, Microsoft, also from the IoT practices, not working there anymore. So I don't know what's happening, but I still believe there will be some consolidation. This is why I urge people to go to open standards. Really, if you lock in your device with a specific vendor, this will fire back at some point of time, if not today, because many of our customers, especially automotive space, they need to support their devices for 15 years. And I'm not quite sure if any vendor gives you API stability promises for 15 years. An open standard guarantees you that you can, whatever in 15 years the vendor of choice will be, you can still use it. But please, just because there's MQTT on there in the marketing material doesn't mean it is, especially when it comes to public cloud vendors. Read the fine print. I really urge people on that. So having that said, yeah. I'm not an analyst. I talk to a lot of analysts, but they predict more consolidation.
No, thank you, Dominik. That's a good insight. And in fact, the guide also talks about what to look out for. So I'm sure, the people who made time to see us today on this session, they'll benefit from all of these kind of things to keep in mind. Open standards, MQTT compliance, and all of that good stuff is in the guide. Now, I'm going to ask the next question, but Jayshree, I know you want to launch a poll. So how about you do that in parallel? Because there's a couple of other questions I would love to cover. So yeah, Jayshree is going to launch a little poll, which you can please respond to. The next common question I'm seeing here, Dominik, is about unstable latency. What people are saying is, we build something, it shows 5 milliseconds in a LAN environment, and then you put it in the field. It's varying between 5 milliseconds to 40 milliseconds, right? I mean, it's a real environment issue. So any of that, what we covered today, do you think we'll have a positive impact on that situation?
Yeah. There are multiple things here that can go wrong. So it depends a bit on the technology. So technologies like MQTT were basically invented for these kind of areas where you have very low bandwidth and high latencies. This is where MQTT really was invented for that case. Still, especially if you look at low power wide area networks. So, for example, you see a lot in Europe, you see a lot of narrowband IoT, which are also available in the US, of course. LTE-M, for example, is also one. But also things like LoRaWAN, if you're more on a private networks, and others. People are using these days, and this is why MQTSN, which I said people should really pay attention. While MQTT is really great, still TCP/IP is in the mix. And if you want to lower latencies even more, MQTT for sensor networks, which I think is unfortunate called, honestly, because it's not only for sensor networks, it's also for low power wide area networks. This will be a complete game changer. So if people are looking for sub 10 milliseconds latencies, for example, if they're on whatever, some multi-access edge compute platforms from whatever AWS, Vodafone, or others, you need some kind of UDP technologies to unlock that. We will have a lot of content around that in probably a few months' time. So people feel free to sign up for our newsletter. So we will keep you posted if you have something to announce. We will be the first ones to announce something around it very, very soon.
Excellent, thank you. And I'm picking another question from a security perspective, right? There's a question that, hey, you know, there's OAuth and there's so many other security options. So can you speak about that as a requirement, as a factor, Dominik? We do talk about some of that in the MQTT buyer's guide, but of course your perspective is going to be helpful.
Yes. Love it. I always love it when security questions is a key thing. Security is not a feature. You add it somehow of time. Security is really the foundation of what one does in IoT. And so there are multiple ways to do that. So for starters, and there are many ways. And by the way, we also have what we call the MQTT Security Essentials. We have it also on our webpage. So for technologists, there's a 10-piece block series that dives into all of the nitty-gritties of what this means, and also compares things like MTLS, mutual TLS, for certificate-based authentication versus OAuth and others. So we have some in-depth content around it for people who are interested. But for starters, what you usually see a lot is device authentication with certificates, X509 certificates to be more precise. Problem here is lifecycle management is really tough for most companies to do. So many companies we work with use OAuth for the devices because it allows you to have a proper revocation, a proper refreshing of existing tokens and so on. And it just provides a neater user experience, especially if you have like actual humans working with the device, like with a car or some kind of other physical device humans interact with. So we integrate with all of them. We have a module called the Enterprise Security Extension that integrates with most of the systems on the market. And also, I mean, we have some customers with what they call themselves legacy security infrastructure, where also the broker integrates and the platform integrates very nicely with our extension SDK. So overall, security key thing, and how we approach it, we're integrating with the existing systems, and otherwise we help customers deciding on the right systems. And we have a professional services team who's also helping out here.
Sounds good. Dominik, I'll just take 30 seconds to remind everybody that, as is evident, right, while we are having this conversation, we talked about the security essentials, MQTT essentials, UNS essentials, there's MQTT 5 essentials. So there's a deep belief we have as a business in educating the market and helping people do the right things. Of course, we learn in the process and we keep modifying our journey accordingly also. And what you heard in Dominik's bio, him being a lecturer and authoring a book, all of this shows to you that we believe in educating about what matters. Now, HiveMQ is obviously part of the MQTT ecosystem, but that doesn't mean that the education you're getting from us is leading essentially towards HiveMQ. So in any case, you should educate yourself about all the different concepts Dominik just covered. And just wanted to underscore that. And with that said, there's also some questions around Sparkplug. And Sparkplug is, again, something we have covered quite deeply in our learning material. So I would invite you to check out our website around Sparkplug Essentials and read through the bandwidth advantage and things along those lines. Dominik, I think we'll have time perhaps to fit one last question.
Sure.
And let me be conscious of what that is. And we are leaving with the promise that some of the questions which deserve, or I shouldn't say deserve, but I believe can benefit from a follow-up. I'll definitely reach out to you. The one question I'll pick is from a UNS perspective, because that came up twice or thrice in our presentation. Somebody has asked if HiveMQ is all it takes to build a UNS, or is there more? Is HiveMQ the UNS, or is UNS essentially made up of HiveMQ brokers? If you could just give your comments on that, Dominik.
Oh, it's a great question. So basically for UNS, what you really need is a kind of MQTT platform, basically at the heart of it. This gives you the access of that. So some of the other key things, we talk about security. you want to make sure you have proper policies in place, there's proper authentication and so on. So very likely you will also see some kind of security systems, and it could even be just be a database also in the mix. It also depends on a bit of the industry. Many customers choose also to use what they call historian, as usually a time series database to give you access, because a broker is usually not holding a history of everything. It provides usually the latest values and so on, but for a rich history, you also have other things in the mix very often. And so, yes, there are companies using just the HiveMQ platform for building their UNS. Sometimes you have other vendors, other systems. Very often you also have a SCADA system in the mix and so on. This is why we believe in partnering with many of the, from our perspective, one of the best companies like around here for many of the different pieces you need, depending on the maturity level, depending on the appetite, what companies want to do. Some of them are really going all in and building also their own teams, building microservices and so on themselves. Some of them relying on third-party software. It really depends a bit, but I think the key is you really need a platform in the middle. And one last thing I didn't mention, that if you don't have high availability here, basically your business is at risk of not working properly. This means having a proper clustered approach. This is what we basically, when we entered the market in 2013, brought as an innovation to the market. You need this kind of clustered approach if you're really going serious with that. But yes, MQAT platform plus all the other pieces, depending on the appetite, it's really enough to get started. I would challenge most people, technology people here, you can get started with an UNS in less than a day. I would even say most of you folks will be able to basically build a first UNS in less than 4 hours with zero prior knowledge. This would be my challenge for that. And if you decide that, let me know, because I really predict that it will take you less than a day and probably less than 4 hours.
Jayashree, that's all from me and Dominik.
Thanks, Dominik. Thanks, Gaurav, for this fantastic presentation. Thanks to all the attendees for tuning in. We hope you all enjoyed the session today. Like already I shared in the beginning of the session, we will send a follow-up email with the recording and the presentation slide. If you have any follow-up questions, or if you would like us to get in touch with you to discuss your IoT use case, or if you would like to know more about our MQTT platform, please reach out to us via form. I've already shared a link in the chat. You can use that link to reach out to us. Sorry. Thanks again for tuning in. Then see you all next time. Have a great day.
Excellent.
Thank
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.